Okay, we have a number of headlines now out of Minnesota. 30 minutes of Tom Homan there that follows up his press conference from a week ago. Unprecedented cooperation, Dana. Talked about smart law enforcement, not less law enforcement. Drawdown of 700 law enforcement personnel. That is significant.
And leaving 2,000.
And leaving thousands behind. I thought the props he gave to the mayor and the governor is a very different attitude.
And the sheriffs.
In Minneapolis. Yes, the sheriffs as well.
He said across the country, unprecedented cooperation with sheriffs.
So Chad Wolf is still with us. And Chad, hello to you.
Hi,
just
Chad.
give us your top line observation from what we just heard from what started as de-escalation a week ago.
Yeah, a lot of positive developments there. I mean, you know, you have Tom Homan saying unprecedented cooperation, which is allowing ICE to go into local jails as well as the state prison system. So that means you need less officers. What would take one or two officers to go in a jail setting, if you have to go out on the streets, that's a set of 20 officers. And so the drawdown that Tom is talking about is the fact that they now have access. They can now go into and pick up dangerous individuals in a jail setting. That's what they've been asking for months now. And so I'm glad to see that he's getting it. I think as that cooperation increases, you'll see even a further drawdown. I think what he was very clear on, though, was making sure that those officers are protected and safe. And so you'll likely see those CBP officers that are providing that force protection likely stay there in Minneapolis until more cooperation comes and they can draw down even more. So my guess is the 700 that are being drawn down are mostly ICE officers because you need less of them to go into neighborhoods than you do into a jail setting.
You mentioned neighborhoods, and one of the big stories I think of today is that you have these civilians who are playing cops, and they are setting up roadblocks and running people's license plates. Tom Homan addressed them as well. Watch here.
As far as what I saw yesterday with the roadblocks being set up, you're not going to stop ICE. You're not going to stop Border Patrol. The only thing you're doing is irritating your community and want to go get groceries or pick their children up or whatever. I talked to the chief of police, and he committed to taking swift action on those illegal roadblocks. They're illegal. We shouldn't tolerate them. Again, a complete drawdown is going to depend on the cooperation, continued cooperation of local and state law enforcement and the decrease of the violence.
Seems like something that local law enforcement could do today to show cooperation, which is to put an end to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, it's illegal, so local police needs to go by, ask them to move, and if they don't, obviously arrest them. I think Tom is exactly right. It's a little bit of a joke. I mean, even if those roadblocks come across ICE officers in a vehicle, what are they going to do? ICE is going to simply keep going, or they're going to arrest them themselves. And so it's not doing anything to impede ICE if that's their goal. It's just impeding other individuals there in the neighborhood that need to get from point A to point B. So I agree with Tom, and it is a good sign if the chief has agreed to making sure that he takes those down, gets them out of the roadway, and gets them on a public sidewalk where they can, peacefully protest if that's what they would like to do.
He mentioned Los Angeles, he mentioned Portland, and getting back to the work of ICE and Border Patrol. Dana and I were sitting here listening to him and just wondering, how does Tom Homan define success?
Right.
Well, I think he did that a couple of different ways, which is targeted operations, which is what ICE has always done. And he continued to reiterate that, making sure they have a target list of criminal illegal aliens. And that's what they're working on. That, when he talks about public safety threats and national security threats, that's his list of targets, and that's what he's going after. But he also made it clear that no one's exempt, that if they come across an individual, a target, but there are 4 or 5 other individuals there that are also in the country illegally, they're not going to just let them go. The Biden administration did that. The Trump administration will not do that. And so I think Tom made it very clear that his priority and how he gauges success will be the arrest of public safety threats, national security threats. But if they come across other individuals that have a final order of removal or others, they will also arrest them. So he was very clear, targeted, prioritized, but no one is exempt from the law.
Okay, thank you, Chad. It was great to have you on the show, and thank you for watching the press conference with us so you could react.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.